Hello and a very warm welcome to the Late Breaking F1 podcast presented by Sam Sage and me, Ben Hocking. You're listening to the Late Breaking F1 podcast on a Thursday, which can only mean one thing. Someone's been very naughty and given us some breaking news a day after we've done our recording session. But for this, it's probably worth it because I don't think it would be hyperbole to say that this is one of the biggest stories in the last decade in F1. Lewis Hamilton will be leaving Mercedes at the end of the 2024 season, and it is heavily rumoured at this point, not quite yet confirmed, but heavily rumoured it will be Ferrari that he goes to in 2025. Sam, where on earth did this come from?
I have spent the entire day having a mild panic attack and not being able to breathe properly. I was in the office of my actual job with people who don't watch Formula One coming up to me going, "What's going on with Lewis Hamilton? Why are you here and not recording a podcast? What's happening?" That tells you how big this news is. I said to someone earlier, it could be, I'm not saying it is, but it could be the biggest news in Formula One history at the moment, that someone at the size of Lewis Hamilton's stature and success is transferring to a team rumoured to be Ferrari. Now, Ferrari, of course, the most historical team, most successful team in Formula One, is now going to possibly be partnering up with the most successful driver in Formula One history. What's he thinking, Ben? After the chaos that they've been through for the last, 15 to 20 years, what on earth is the man thinking?
It's an interesting one. I think Lewis Hamilton, we got to the point where obviously he's been in F1 for so long, but only been at two teams. And at the end of this season, it will be, I think, 12 straight seasons with Mercedes. And that's what he's calling the curtain on that part of his career. I know the Ferrari rumours, the Hamilton Ferrari rumours have been, should we say, on and off pretty much throughout his entire career. But at least personally, I don't think I've ever taken them all that seriously. There were even rumblings last year, but maybe I should have taken them a bit more seriously. I mean, you said shock as being the obvious first reaction to this. After spending a few hours with it, not confirmed, but pretty much confirmed, did you have any other further thoughts?
Yeah, once the shock actually settles and I was able to potentially process what we were all going through collectively, that's you listening, the Formula One audience, everyone that's got a stake in Formula, not the team, I meant more like a stakeholder in Formula One. I think you're lying if you do not find this really, really exciting. Because the idea for me of Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari is one of those like fantasy concepts you kind of come up with in your mind that you're like, it's never going to happen though. Like he's locked into Mercedes, they love each other, they're very happy. And Ferrari are Ferrari and they have their lineup and they don't do things like this because they're Ferrari. And it's actually happening. It's like a dream that you have once has come to life. And I must admit, I think it's really, really exciting. I think this could be one of the coolest lineups we've ever seen in F1. Hamilton and Leclerc, if they get a car that can knock out a lap on Saturday, I mean, it sounds spicy. It sounds very, very spicy. Ben, how do you feel after the shock subsided? What were your initial thoughts on the concept of Hamilton possibly signing for Ferrari?
Oof size large is my summary on this, because you're right. It's something, again, that has been sort of on and off rumoured for a while, but never all that seriously. And it has become more of a dream scenario than something people realistically think was going to happen. But you're absolutely right. It is first and foremost great for F1, particularly timing-wise. Of course, it comes about 24 hours after the news of Andretti not being admitted to the F1 grid in 25 and 26, which is suspicious timing at best. But it's the sort of news I think F1 desperately needed at this point. And it's something we spoke about on last week's episode. I can't remember immediately whether it was the Wednesday or Sunday episode, but we spoke about how, Lando Norris staying with McLaren, and it seems as if there's more of a leaning towards drivers staying at their current teams to be number one there, which makes sense in a lot of respects, but also I think over the last few years has cost us a few really exciting partnerships. I don't think we're getting as many of those as maybe we did in previous eras. The Hamilton-Rosberg era is something that people very rightly remember so fondly. But if you think of some of the partnerships, I guess, that haven't materialized in recent years. We've never had Hamilton and Verstappen. We've never had Verstappen and Alonso. We've never had Alonso and Leclerc. There are so many mouth-watering partnerships that have never happened. But as you say, Hamilton, Leclerc, whoa, that is a partnership. That is an absolute partnership. So I feel like that was probably after the surprise, that was maybe my first reaction. My secondary reaction was, this really does prove that the allure of Ferrari is still very much alive. It is still very much alive because there have been a lot of highs and lows for the team in the last 20 years, probably more lows than highs if you consider Ferrari's rich F1 heritage. But yeah, I think his replacement as well, the guy he's replacing as well, Carlos Sainz, is another example of this. Both Sainz and Hamilton have moved to Ferrari when they are moving away from a team that they aren't necessarily any better than. If you think Sainz moved away from McLaren and Ferrari at that point were very similar in terms of pace. Here, we've got Mercedes and Ferrari, who going into the last race of the 23 season were pretty much neck and neck. So I think it confirms that the nostalgia and the marketing of Ferrari continues to do such a great job to be able to, take stars like Lewis Hamilton and convince them that it's the right move for them.
I think whilst you're right, the allure of Ferrari is ever present. And it was Sebastian Vettel that said, everyone's a Ferrari fan. And even if you think you're not, you are. And it's true. We all grew up with the Schumacher era being the most dominant thing that we saw on screen. And we all have a very big soft spot for the red car going round in circles. And I guess that Lewis Hamilton, albeit a few years older than us, witnessed a lot of the same thing throughout, the 90s and into the early 2000s, where he was going up through Formula One. But it also shows that Lewis Hamilton is a brand in itself. It shows that he has allure. It shows that he has so much potential yet to give, and a team like Ferrari can see it in him, because I don't know how often in the last 15 to 20 years of Formula One, of motorsport, would you have seen a team like Ferrari at the very top, always fighting second or third or first, wherever it might be, they're up there, taking a punt on removing someone like Carlos Sainz, who finished, 3 points behind Charles Leclerc last season and has beaten him once in their 3 seasons together. Yeah. There you go. Something like that. Almost equally matched. And going, you know what we need to do? We need to sign 38-year-old Lewis Hamilton, who might only have 2 years left of his career. And that's the thing we should do. And you can see the appeal, because Ferrari, who are worth an absolute bucket load already, their value in the stock market since this has even been rumoured, let alone since this announcement's happened this evening, they've gone up $7 billion in valuation, which is an absolute mammoth climb in valuation for any company. And this is Ferrari, who are already considered one of the most valuable car companies in the world. So it's not just Ferrari that has this allure. It's almost like someone has bread and someone has butter, and they went, what do we do if we put them together? And you have bread and butter, and it's like one of the most perfect combinations of things that starts off brilliantly for everything else. And it's together. We finally got bread and butter together. So I'm so excited, genuinely so excited. There was a part of me that wanted to scream earlier. That's how excited I am. Doesn't happen a lot in Formula One anymore.
I'm surprised you didn't.
There was, when you kind of walk into a room and you shut the door behind you and you can't make a lot of noise. So video watchers, you'll see this. And you get the whole like the silent scream where you kind of can't shout, but you do shout. That's kind of what I did. I was like a kid again watching Formula One. I was like, it reignited something in me. I was very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I was anticipating all day. Of course, as you say, we were in our separate workplaces today, so I had no idea what your actual reaction was. But I just envisaged like your Michael Scott. This is happening. Oh my God, this is happening. Yeah, just all day. I guess one question that a lot of people are asking on this, and I think it's a valid question: why has he done this? Because I think there is almost two trains of thought on this. Number one is, he's looking to replicate what he's done with Mercedes, where he moved to the team at the right time. And is he looking to make that sort of cerebral decision again? Or is this I've been in F1 this long, I've done everything apart from race for Ferrari, I want to tick that off the bucket list, and it's more of a sentimental choice? Which of those two do you think is the leading cause for this happening?
Yeah, I feel like the obvious way to get out of that one is to say both. But you've been quite crafty with the saying the leading cause, you clever boy. I think Lewis Hamilton is still 100% laser focused on winning. I think he wants that 8th title. I think he wants more race wins. And I do think there is a romantic association. And you've heard it from Vettel. You've heard it from Leclerc. You hear it all the way back through history of winning a title with Ferrari. And if someone like Lewis Hamilton would cap off his career with an 8th world title at Ferrari, what a story. What a bloody cool story that would be for Formula One, for himself, for the Tifosi as well, reignite that ability to win and to overcome something like Verstappen and Red Bull with a Lewis Hamilton at the helm. I think Lewis Hamilton has looked at this. And you know what? It's very interestingly aligned because recently he's signed his new management, but his new management is his old management. And I think they were around when he made the move to go to Mercedes. I think that was part of the management team that were present when he made that initial shift. Now, Lewis Hamilton isn't a stupid boy. He's not an idiot. He's got a pretty face that could just drive cars fast, right? He knows how to look at a situation and assess it. He can do that as well. He can do that. He's annoyingly very talented at multiple things. It's not fair. It's not fair. Bloody handsome, smart, talented men. But what he did the first time, right, is he was at McLaren and he stuck it out at a McLaren car that wasn't amazing for the last couple of years. Picked up a couple of wins, of course, in that time. He got his first title there beforehand. And then he made the switch to Mercedes. And you've got to remember that Mercedes at the time when he made the switch hadn't really done too much. They were a up-and-coming team. They weren't absolutely flailing around at the back, but they never asserted their dominance the way they did after he arrived. And you've got to remember there was a year once he arrived that they also weren't phenomenally good. It's not like the year one, step into it, win every title. That didn't happen. So he knows how to assess a project. He knows how to assess a journey and he knows what he's looking for. And I think he's done that again, but it's also been paired with the relationship of Frederick Vasseur, who he has got almost a lifelong friendship and mentorship with. You see photos of Lewis Hamilton in the junior categories when he was very young with Freddie Vass, right? Yeah, holding his shoulders, celebrating victories with him. He's been there a long time, and he did the same with Charles Leclerc. So I would not be surprised if we heard the rumours last year, nothing happened. I wouldn't be shocked if Freddie Vass has come in, changed the direction and the trajectory of Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton has been called up by Frederick Vasseur and gone, have a think. I'm here. The project is good. Charles Leclerc is very confident and you like him. Do you think this is something you could be interested in? And I think it's swayed him. I think he's gone, there's a better chance at winning here than there is at Mercedes, which says a lot because you look at how successful he was at Mercedes. And if he thinks there's a better chance at Ferrari when they don't know what plan H is, then what were Mercedes doing in their future plans? Because you saw the face he pulled when he did the seat fitting. And he must have taken one look at that car and gone, nah, Ferrari it is for me. Thank you very much. It's a huge switch. There's got to be a lot to sway him. I do not think it's for romantic reasons. I think it's for victory.
Fair enough. And we have now, it's very, very late, very live, late breaking here today, but it is now confirmed that Lewis Hamilton is definitely 100% at Ferrari as we're recording this, at least for next season. I think you're right. There is an element of both to this. I do think there is a part, he wouldn't go there if he didn't think he could win. I absolutely agree with that. I do think there is an element of I really just want to do this. I think an element is as simple as that. In that we know that driving for Ferrari is the dream of so many people who come into Formula One. And Lewis Hamilton, again, not stupid. He knows that he's had far more seasons in the sport than he's got left in the sport. Now, whether it's another 2 or another 5, that remains to be seen. But he's far closer to the end than he is the beginning. And he's ticked off nearly everything. He's got over 100 race wins. He's won 7 world championships. 6 of them came at the team that he's leaving, which is more than any one driver at one single team. So given the amount of poles that he's done pretty much everything. Race for Ferrari isn't on that list. So I think it is part of a lot of people will try and read a great deal into this decision. I actually think the answer might be more simple than that. I think it might just be, hey, I'd love to do that. I mean, it's not going to affect his wallet, right? He's already rich and he'll keep getting richer. It's not like Ferrari are going to, pay him nothing or pay him very little. He will still be very handsomely compensated. And also, yeah, you mentioned his brand. I mean, that's going to be an ongoing factor for him as well as he transitions into his post F1 life. For being at Ferrari is not going to do him any harm there either. So, yeah, I think you're right. There is definitely an element of both to this, but I do agree. He's, if Ferrari were 8th in the championship, he wouldn't move. Like, he's moving there because he thinks they have a realistic chance, maybe on a similar scale to Mercedes, but maybe just tipped them over the edge was the, just wanting to do it.
Yeah, you know what, Ben? Before we move on, I think there's a lot to be said in Formula One for just wanting to do something. And I think we don't see it a lot. I think you're right when we don't see these dramatic moves between teams. Like when Fernando Alonso was in his first time around in Formula One and he would jump between these Goliaths of teams, right? He went from Renault, then went to Ferrari, and then goes to McLaren. Those are mega moves for a world champion to make. And we don't really see it. Sebastian Vettel, Red Bull to Ferrari, and then essentially kind of got forced out the door and ended up at what was at the time a mid to backseat marker of Aston Martin. It doesn't happen, but someone with the status of Lewis Hamilton, the biggest driver in the sport we've ever seen, realistically, in terms of social following and awareness. I say Michael Schumacher is the only person that is even on a par with him to just go, I know I just signed the contract, but screw that. I go race for Ferrari and I'm going to do it. I've got a lot of admiration to just be able to go and do that.
Okay, we're going to take a short break at this point, but we're going to have more on the other side on this breaking news story. Okay, welcome back. We've discussed in recent podcasts the different lineups that are going to be in place for the 2024 season, and on multiple occasions we've praised the ability and the consistency of the Ferrari team, that being Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. Of course, Charles Leclerc's contract was announced very recently, and at the time we asked the question, is it in any way suspicious that Charles Leclerc got his contract and Carlos Sainz, as of that point, had not? Turns out it was very suspicious. So let's look at the Carlos Sainz side of things here, because a lot of the focus naturally is going to be on Lewis Hamilton coming into the team. But of course, that does mean Carlos Sainz will be out of the team, having spent a good few years at the Ferrari team. What are your thoughts on that, Sam? Because he's a bit of an unfortunate almost bystander in this, isn't he?
My heart goes out to Carlos, if I'm totally honest, because I think maybe other than Max Verstappen, if any other driver expressed an interest, they would go, is it worth taking a risk and getting rid of Carlos Sainz? You look at his history, as we've already said, up against Charles Leclerc. He's beaten him once. And okay, Charles Leclerc had a slightly unfortunate season, but regardless, they were neck and neck all season. And that was the first time that Carlos Sainz stepped into a Ferrari that he got the better of him. So immediately, he settled into that family. Second year, the car was better. Charles Leclerc settled very much into that kind of race-winning status. But Carlos Sainz was still very good and at no point ever embarrassed himself. And then 2023 comes around, and for every single race, bar the last Grand Prix, from how it finished, Carlos Sainz was leading Charles Leclerc, I believe, in the points table, and Charles Leclerc overtook him on the final race. So realistically, when you spread that over 3 seasons, there isn't a lot between them in terms of ability. There isn't a lot in terms of how many different race results they've got. And even with Charles Leclerc sticking it on pole position far more times than Carlos Sainz has, the points tally is very, very small between them. So it says that their race pace is arguably very much the same. So my heart goes out to Carlos Sainz. I do feel like he is a bit of a casualty of a situation that he has absolutely no control over. And it's kind of like when Lewis Hamilton comes calling, who's the person that gets booted out, which is what it feels like, So what does he do from here? Where does he go? There's rumours already circling around that he might look at a direct swap and he might fill in that Mercedes seat that has now become available. There's also talks of him possibly going to Aston Martin. And who would he fill there? Would it be Alonso? He's not going anywhere, I don't think. Lance Stroll, can't see him being kicked out either. And of course, the other one that's in conversation is Audi. Now, The issue there is Audi not here till 2026. Does he replace Bottas or Zhou now or in the 2025 season? It will be a sporadic change. It will be a rushed change. It will be planned, of course. I do feel like he's just been caught short here, and it's a bit unfortunate for him. So, yeah, tough one to assess. Ben, what are your thoughts thinking about Carlos Sainz?
Well, many thanks to producer Kirsty, who's just sent through a Carlos Sainz statement from this evening. This is what he's put out on Instagram. He said, following today's news, Scuderia Ferrari and myself will part ways at the end of 2024. We still have a long season ahead of us, and like always, I will give my absolute best for the team and for the Tifosi all around the world. News about my future will be announced in due course. Unknowingly, producer Kirsty has been absolutely savage with this, because you might well notice that her screenshot to us has her battery percentage, which is 44.
She didn't even know.
Absolutely savage. I mean, yeah, news about my future will be announced in due course is perhaps the most interesting part of that statement. Realistically, someone is going to pick Carlos Sainz up, and it would be a travesty if no one did, because Carlos Sainz is honestly such an unfortunate position here, where we have really praised his consistency over the last few years. He's essentially had 5 years of partnering either Charles Leclerc or Lando Norris. This guy has not had it easy when it's come to teammates, certainly in the last half a decade, and he has absolutely held his own. I think we all accept and agree that Charles Leclerc, when given the car, is one step above Carlos Sainz, but crucially, it's only one. Like, he's not 5 steps ahead. We haven't seen the same sort of, I don't know, Hamilton and Bottas gap, or the same Verstappen and Perez gap. Sainz has been pretty much there all the way, particularly in the 2 seasons that you've referenced. So this is massively unfortunate for him, and I do think it is absolutely right to raise his side of the story here, because again, a lot of focus will rightly be on the Lewis Hamilton side of this, but Carlos Sainz has done such an admirable job for the team over the last few years. We've said on multiple occasions there are issues at Ferrari, many of which Lewis Hamilton is going to find out about very soon. But one of the issues that Ferrari don't have is their driver lineup. Their driver lineup is about as solid as it could have been over the last few years. And whether it is a straight swap at Mercedes, whether it's Audi, whether it's somewhere else, I think Red Bull could do far worse than having a look at him alongside Verstappen for 25. So, you know, there are options there for Sainz. I feel like at least one of them is gonna go in for him, and Sainz deserves to be in a position where he's picking between teams rather than salvaging a spot somewhere, in my opinion. A bit of a left field question for you, Sam. And it's about Lando Norris. Now, we know Lando Norris confirmed his contract last week. Do you think he's regretting that?
Do you think Lewis Hamilton is sat there with a little evil smile on his face thinking, oh, I think I like this little life. Look at what I've done. Look at this chaos that I've caused. And
does he do that? If knowing this was going to happen, does he do that?
I don't know. I'm not in his head. And I think if you were to look at, and we're comparing earlier in the podcast, we compared how if Ferrari were in 8th place, Lewis Hamilton doesn't go to Ferrari, but he's doing what Carlos Sainz did at McLaren, where he sidestepped. At the time, he sidestepped. Ferrari and McLaren were at the same level when he made that move. And arguably, Lewis Hamilton has sidestepped. Ferrari and Mercedes, for the entire season, really, neck and neck. Of course, Ferrari picked up that one race wing. Mercedes didn't pick up any race wings. So they are in a very similar position in terms of the title. I think McLaren are also a sidestep right now. If you look at just current results, it's whether Lando Norris would want to take a punt and think Mercedes are an OEM. Mercedes have got all this backing. The Mercedes family is huge. I could build a legacy there. Or does he go, I have a home at McLaren. They worship me here. I am the focus for the next 5, 10 years, however long he wants to be there for. They've invested in me and everything I could be. And if he has faith in the car and what Mr. Marketing Man, Zach Brown, has said, why would he abandon ship for a team that is yes, incredibly successful, but over recent seasons been very, very unsteady and uncertain in their direction. So I don't know if he's regretting it. I'm sure there's a little part of him that thinks, I've been interested, but I don't think he's regretting it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think from Mercedes' perspective, and I don't want to get into this too much now, but if you're lining up all of the potential options for Mercedes, if Lando Norris is there and available, I feel like he's target one. I don't think there's anyone else out there that you would put ahead of him. And I don't want to get into it too much now because I'm going to become marketing man. I'm going to reveal on Sunday's episode my 10 drivers who I would put in that Mercedes alongside George Russell for 2025. So you're going to have to tune in.
10, Ben? That's insane.
Yep. I'm going 10 down a 1. But you're going to have to tune in on Sunday to hear that. So there you go. There's a bit of marketing for you. There you go, Zach Brown. I can do it just as well as you can. That's when no one tunes in. But yeah, I think from Lando Norris's perspective, he would absolutely be at the top of that list if he was available. I'm with you though. I think even knowing that, I think Lando Norris would stick with McLaren. It's an interesting one though, and Mercedes are in this weird position where we've discussed this before. Mercedes, ever since coming back to Formula One in 2010, have had such consistency in their lineup, but also when change has happened, it's been, I don't know, premeditated. It's been prepared over multiple years. You had Schumacher and Rosberg in the first instance. Everyone knew Schumacher wasn't going to be there for more than a few years. Lewis Hamilton comes in. Lewis Hamilton and Rosberg are teammates for a few years. Valtteri Bottas has worked with Toto Wolff for multiple years before going to Mercedes. He spent multiple years at Williams honing his craft. The move is natural. It's seamless. And then, of course, George Russell. He's spent multiple years at Williams, but being part of the Mercedes Junior program. This feels like the first time where Mercedes have almost been blindsided and they're going to have to make a decision, regardless of what way that decision goes, that isn't natural, that they're going to have to improvise. And I'm really interested to see what direction they go with it because, like I say, I think I can put together 10 names that they could theoretically think about for this position. They're not short on options.
I think bar Max Verstappen, every single driver in world motorsport right now consider that seat.
Leclerc and Sainz replaces Leclerc.
I'll come back, please. Yeah, I mean, again, I've had some spicy options in mind. There's already been rumours floating around of who will be entering that seat. But this is the first time that Mercedes have been properly caught with their pants down. There is no one lined up. Even when Rosberg shock retired after winning that title, Bottas was ready. He wasn't rumoured to go into that seat the next year, and I think Rosberg probably would have still been in there for at least a couple of years afterwards. But Bottas was ready, and the relationship was there, and it was built. And again, when Bottas came to an end, as you mentioned, George Russell had been sitting there waiting pretty longer than he needed to be, really, before getting into that seat. But now,
too long,
yeah, I think so. But now you look at Mercedes driver lineup, and you think, where do they go? They've got Frederick Vesti in F2, and they've got Kimi Antonelli, who's just entered F2 at 17 years old. That's their junior program at the moment. Could you imagine? We'll get into details again on Sunday. Won't go into that too much right now. But the options are overflowing, and I imagine that Roman Grosjean is personally sprinting to Brackley to get that drive.
He's got that. It's a great shout.
The Phoenix, he rises again. The possibilities really are endless. And Toto Wolff is about to become the most popular man in all of sport, I imagine, to make this decision. It's going to be really, really difficult. And realistically, there isn't replacing of Lewis Hamilton. I think unless you went and got Max Verstappen, there is not a like for like. A question, Ben, I wanted to ask you when this happened. When we did our podcast a few weeks ago, ranking the best driver lineups. Of course, we all had slight differences, but we had Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari in our top three. Does this shift Ferrari for you, having Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc at the same team?
Yeah, that's the number one lineup for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That goes straight to number one. Sorry, George Russell. I've got much love for you, but that is tops. Freddie Vass is building an empire, it feels like.
Yeah, current Hamilton, current Leclerc, that is that is the best lineup in F1 for me. And I still think there's a couple of other lineups that are very good, but I don't know. I don't think anyone quite matches that. One final question for you, Sam, before we go. Just about Mercedes for 2024, because it's quite rare that a driver moves from one team to another and it's known about before the current season has started. So based on that, what do you make of, how do you think it's going to unfold this year for Hamilton at Mercedes? Do you think that Russell is given preferential treatment in any way? How do you think that plays out?
If you'd like to think about this situation up and down the team, I think it would shift entirely on who the team was. For example, I think if this was a Red Bull announcement that happened, if Max Verstappen, decided, I'm up and leaving, see you later. I think Red Bull are the kind of ruthless nature where they go, right, all resource goes into our current team. We're a family and we're existing and that's how we run forward. I think Mercedes have such loyalty, especially Toto Wolff, has such loyalty to Lewis Hamilton, and there is such a mutual respect there. I'm sure that the personal aspect of this move for Lewis Hamilton hasn't come lightly. I'm sure he isn't swinging around the factory. See you later. All right, bye. I'm sure he is being very respectful and decent to the people that he's worked with for a very long time. I don't think that George Russell will get extreme preferential treatment. I do not think that every single time there is a pit first, pit second, or if there's a go out first in qualifying, I don't think that will happen. I really do think that they will maintain the relationship as it is, and they will prep George Russell to be their number one, their golden boy after this point forward. I think that makes sense logically, but it's Mercedes and they've had such a legacy together. I don't think they want to sour that. I really don't think that Lewis Hamilton leaving takes anything away from the brilliant accomplishments that they as a team have accomplished. And I think Toto Wolff will be aware of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's far too much respect there on both sides for this to go that pear-shaped. I can't see, I can't see one side lashing out on the other. There's just, like I say, there's been nearly 12 years there. There's been so much success. There's so much respect that I think both sides see this out in a professional manner. But that remains to be seen throughout the season. I think that's a good place to leave this. It will come as no surprise that I'm sure follow-up to this will be included on our regular Sunday episode in a few days' time. So I would absolutely advise you to check that out when it's available. And of course, any sort of tidbits that come out in the next couple of days, we're all very active on our social media channels, both personally and of course on our Late Breaking at Late Breaking everywhere. Sam, do you want to get us out of here?
Folks, Ben's already said it all. Make sure you check out Patreon as well, because we're going to be bringing you loads of news throughout the off-season, and we will be here evaluating liveries, title charges, the whole season, everything, and extra special stuff. Late Breaking F1 at all things, as Ben's already said. Join the Discord if we're going to chat about the announcement, and we will see you soon. So in the meantime, I've been Samuel Sage.
And I've been Ben Hocking. And remember, keep breaking late.